Right, today we have Thor 339 by the mighty Simon Waltonson, part 3 of the Ballad of Beta Ray Cyrus. Warning: surgeons have generally determined that Assistant Editors Month is dangerous to your health. This was Assistant Editors Month. What that was is Robert the subscriber's favourite time of the year. He celebrates it every year. Unlike Marvel, who only did it the one time in 1984. The main editors were away to San Diego Comic-Con, and so their assistants were given full creative control of their titles for a month. Many of them went for oddball or offbeat ideas. Stuff they did was like, they had Fred Embeck draw a whole issue of Spider-Man. They had a woman Captain America. That is outrageous, that is. David Letterman! Hi, David. I'm Grandpa. No! This issue of Thor, the actual story, is completely normal. It is no different from how it would be if it was released a month earlier. Marky Mark G is our regular editor, and for this issue, he has handed the reins over to Mike Carlsberg, who he often collaborates with. We are picking up where we left off with the story. Beta Ray Cyrus has won the right to wield Thor's magic hammer through contests. But the issue impresses me by getting to Laura on page 2. Laura is great. More Laura, please. She thinks that Beta Ray Cyrus is real ugly, and that she would much rather shag a handsome bloke like Thor. Well, there's my chances with her blown. Now, I mentioned it in issue 1, and then didn't mention it in issue 2, parts 1 and 2, I mean. Last issue did establish, for the first time, that she is Amanda the Enchanter's sister. I think I cut it out for brevity, but I am glad that I did, because I have thought on it for a while. Why did Simon Waltonson introduce a new character in Laura instead of using Amanda in her place? I initially went, he is honouring the more nuanced take on Amanda from Secret Wilds. She was finally given a proper character in that, moving her away from witchy harpy to spoilt brat, which Simon Waltonson will later expand on a lot in his run on this title. But then I realised that is not the case. This was before Secret Wilds. Simon Waltonson must have just really fancied Debbie Harry and wanted to see what she would look like with red hair. Thor is being a sad boy over his loss, and he says that he's going to leave Fairyland forever and never come back. We remedy that with what is actually a really great scene between Beta Ray Cyrus and Sir Anthony Hopkins. Beta Ray Cyrus is really unhappy about his victory. He feels that it was unearned. And he also fears that if he could defeat Thor and take his hammer, then surely someone else could as easily defeat him and take the hammer. Anthony Hopkins actually feels like he isn't a knobhead for a page. And then we are straight away back to him being a knobhead. He goes to visit Peter Dinklage, the traitor Peter Dinklage, the, ironically, massive traitor who doesn't want any smaller people in movies, except for himself. Peter Dinklage, of course, was responsible for forging Thor's magic hammer, and Anthony Hopkins is going to have him create a new magic hammer for Beta Ray Cyrus. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Oh, but wait, Peter Dinklage demands a woman for the Dwarf King. So Anthony Hopkins is happy to accommodate this and sells S.H.I.E.L.D. into dwarf sex slavery. Anthony Hopkins makes a habit of this with his subjects. He also sold Amanda the Enchanter to trolls, who then gang raped her horribly. And that was just a thing that happened in a few pages of a story, and it didn't even matter. Horrible, that one. The writer of it wrote the best-selling comic of 2025. S.H.I.E.L.D. goes off to a new life as a dwarf cum-rag, but the conversation with Thor and Beta Ray Cyrus is more interesting. Simon Waltonson is a good writer though, so we don't actually have S.H.I.E.L.D. be raped or become a prisoner bride. Simon Waltonson understands rape in comics. He knows that it is better when Laura does it to Thor than when a man does it to a woman. I was going to again praise the use of the Fairyland characters. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but Simon Waltonson set the 5 supporting characters up, and he has so cleverly been using them rather than just introducing more and more. Pay attention, DC Challenge, you might learn something. Earlier, when Laura was saying that she wouldn't shag Beta Ray Cyrus, she could easily have been talking to someone we know, like Aragon, or Boromir, or Robbie Coltrane, he's probably in it. But no, she was talking to a nameless extra, and then after that, Steve. He is building on what he has set up. That scene, it could have been used to introduce another character, or it could have been used for what it was used for, which was to add more character to Laura and to set up S.H.I.E.L.D. and Beta Ray Cyrus. Now here, we have Gimli, continuing from last issue. He is still telling this nameless extra about Baldric. Although this nameless extra did get a name, Agnar, I think his name was Agnar. Agnar could have went on to appear some more as a go-to nameless extra in Fairyland. Whenever they need someone unimportant to go fetch somewhere, it could be Agnar. Agnar, go fetch a fresh towel. Agnar, we need a pen. Stat. Agnar, I'm hungry. Go get some KFC. Gimli is telling him about the fucking most confusing shit ever. Ragnarok. And how Baldric died. And is forever prophesized to die at the hands of Tom Hiddleston at the beginning of Ragnarok. This is the first wrong foot Simon Waltonson has made with Fairyland, referring to and trying to explain that part of mythology to people. Here, this is the first issue where we haven't opened with suture. This is our suture tease for this issue, and it is the bit I spent the longest time thinking on. I spent about 5 to 10 minutes thinking about this page, because part of me thought that it would be a clever misdirect if this was Peter Dinklage making Beta Ray Cyrus's armour, but the writing definitely points to suture. The sound effect probably makes it obvious, but I was so convinced that it would have been a very intelligent misdirection to show us Peter Dinklage making the armour and write around it and make people think that we're just seeing more suture. But it is suture. Quebec. Whereas the scene before is what baffled me, and before that we had Ragnarok Law, I would estimate this is actually the bit that confused most people. We have a bit of flavour with this guy in a lighthouse. He bought a food processor, and then from underneath it escapes what looks like it could be suture or another fire demon. It is Fafnir. Although straight away I need to clarify, there are 2 Fafnirs in Thor mythology. There is this guy, it's not him, and then there is this guy, a dragon, it is him. The dragon is the more well-known of the Fafnirs. Here are the 2 Fafnirs in the same scene. We will pick up on one of the Fafnirs after this ballad reaches its coda. S.H.I.E.L.D. fights the rape dwarf. God, it's so good when you don't have bad men writing comics, isn't it? S.H.I.E.L.D. defeats a would-be rape husband, and thus earns her freedom from the sex slavery. Some rape enablers would defend Anthony Hopkins and say that he chose S.H.I.E.L.D. because he believed she could do this and never be enslaved or raped. But Amanda the Enchanter, on the other hand, was railed by ugly trolls. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Beta Ray Cyrus, this will be a thing. Earn him. One of the good examples of Marvel moving on and letting their characters grow. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Thor, they've had their day. They keep breaking up and getting back together. It's obviously not working. So now, she is going to fuck a horse. We end up eventually just back to the same hard shit though. S.H.I.E.L.D. and Thor, they break up, they make up, they break up again. And their relationship does never progress. Now, here is our actual scene of Peter Dinklage making the armour. I also need to explain that the whole rape marriage thing, there was even some subterfuge from Peter Dinklage. He hated that of a dwarf, the Dwarf King. He probably got himself an acting job, and Peter Dinklage couldn't stand that happening to another like-sized gentleman. I just think Anthony Hopkins is a bastard, and he would have been fine with S.H.I.E.L.D. being imprisoned as a fuck stump. Maybe that would teach Thor some humility. outside this page, it was outside. Well, actually, I'll explain it first. We have Beta Ray Cyrus, now with his own magic hammer, a splash image of that. It also ran as outside. It was a big promotional image. There was a press poster. This was one of the big advertisements for the start of this run. And now, both armed with their magic hammers, Thor and Beta Ray Cyrus will go to fight and defend and save Beta Ray Cyrus's own planet. And so shall Sieve. She will join them in their campaign. Here is our assistant editor's month bit. We have Simon Waltonson and Mike Carlsberg dancing. Oh, I wish it was assistant editor's month every day. That is the review. Some prick will give this a dislike, probably. I don't care. But it makes me feel like bothering to come up with a conclusion is a waste of time. I like the comic, but according to YouTube analytics, most people turn my videos off after, at most, 2 minutes. So what's the point of even saying 7 thumbs up?